For centuries, the human tribes of the Eastern Kingdoms thrived, though their existence was marked by constant conflict over land and power. Among them, the Arathi tribes stood on the northeastern borderlands, locked in a long and bloody history of skirmishes with the forest-dwelling trolls of the Arathi Empire. The Arathi had retained the ancient art of weaponsmithing, a legacy passed down from their Vrykul ancestors. About 2,800 years before the Dark Portal, the troll incursions grew increasingly aggressive, posing a dire threat to the fractured human tribes. The Arathi, under the leadership of their warlord Thoradin, recognized that humanity's survival depended on unity. Faced with the possibility of annihilation, Thoradin declared himself king, vowing to unite the scattered tribes under one banner to stand against the rising troll menace. Thoradin's campaign was not just one of conquest, but also of diplomacy and strategy. Over 6 relentless years, he brought the tribes together through a mix of political marriages, promises of prosperity, and, when needed, through force. After each victory, Thoradin offered his defeated foes peace and equality in a new vision of a united human nation. This pragmatic approach, rare for such a young and war-torn race, won the loyalty of former enemies, transforming once bitter rivals into allies. Thoradin's bold plan laid the foundation for a new era of human strength and cooperation, as they faced the looming threat of the Arathi Empire together, not as scattered tribes, but as a unified force. Thoradin's rise to power was marked by both strength and cunning. To bring the Alterachi tribe into his fold, he challenged their leader Igneus to a duel and emerged victorious, proving his dominance. For the fiercely spiritual tribes of Tirisfal Glades, he took a different approach, tapping into their religious beliefs by promising to honor and spread their traditions among the Arathi people. But Thoradin's most clever move came when he asked each tribal leader to offer up their weapon. His blacksmiths embedded shards from these weapons into his own greatsword, Stromkar. This symbolic act held deep meaning for the tribes, as they believed their ancestors' spirits resided within their weapons. Now, with the forebear's essence bound to Thoradin's sword, no warlord dared challenge him, for to strike against him would mean striking at their own ancestors. Under Thoradin's banner, once divided human tribes united as one. He declared this new nation Arathor and established its capital in Strom, a city nestled in the region that would become known as the Arathi Highlands. Arathor's strength grew, and it soon found a powerful ally in the High Elves of Quel'Thalas. Together, they faced the Amani trolls in the legendary Troll Wars, emerging victorious. In gratitude, the High Elves swore loyalty and eternal friendship to Arathor and to Thoradin's bloodline, cementing an alliance that would shape the future of the Eastern Kingdoms. Arathor stood strong for over 1,000 years, but like all great empires, it eventually fractured. Roughly 1,200 years before the Dark Portal, Strom's noble families, lured by the promise of fertile lands, sought to leave the rugged Arathi Highlands for the northern regions of Lordaeron. Thoradin's heirs, descendants of the once unifying Arathi lineage, fought to keep Strom alive, believing the ancient capital should not be forsaken. However, the nobles left regardless, and soon even the Arathi bloodline, led by a figure named Falder, departed Strom. They traveled south and founded a new kingdom, Stormwind, in the wilderness of Azeroth. As Arathor dissolved, the last remnants of the once great empire faded into myth, with northern kingdoms recounting tales of the Arathi disappearing into the southern lands after the empire's fall. Yet the legacy of the Arathor bloodline endured through Lord Anduin Lothar, a descendant of Thoradin. A legendary warrior like his ancestors, Lothar rose to lead the alliance of Lordaeron during the Second War. Before the conflict with the Orcish horde, Lothar invoked the ancient oath sworn by the High Elves of Quel'Thalas to Thoradin's line, calling upon their loyalty once again. Lothar's heroic stand ended with his death at the siege of Blackrock Spire, marking the end of the Arathi bloodline in the Eastern Kingdoms. However, whispers persist of a surviving branch of Lothar's family in the distant Arathi Empire across the sea, keeping alive the legacy of Thoradin. Anduin Lothar was one of the last living descendants of the Arathi bloodline. Raised in the royal court of Stormwind, he shared a close bond with Prince Lane Wrynn and Medivh, forming a trio that would shape the future of Azeroth. In their youth, the three ventured into the untamed wilderness, facing dangers like the savage jungle trolls in Stranglethorn Vale. forging a brotherhood that would last into adulthood. Lothar's early years were marked by a deep dedication to the study of warfare and history. He joined Stormwind's military at a young age, where his natural leadership and combat prowess quickly earned him a place in the King's Honor Guard. His bravery and talent on the battlefield did not go unnoticed, and he was soon knighted, rising to the prestigious rank of armsman in the elite Brotherhood of the Horse, which was the official name of the Kingdom of Stormwind's knights before the First War. Lothar's fame spread beyond Stormwind, reaching the distant kingdoms of Lordaeron and even the magical city of Dalaran. His reputation as a warrior of unmatched valor and a leader of great wisdom set him apart, foreshadowing the legendary role he would later play in Azeroth's history. Years after the Null War, Stormwind settlers began expanding southward, encroaching on the land near the dangerous jungles of Stranglethorn Vale, home to the fierce Gurubashi tribe. Tensions quickly escalated and skirmishes broke out between Stormwind forces and the Gurubashi warriors. However, King Barathin Rin, now elderly, refused to order a full invasion into Stranglethorn. Instead, he focused on a defensive strategy, much to the frustration of his son, Prince Lane, who saw the need for more aggressive action. Although the king's defensive approach managed to hold back most Gurubashi raids, it couldn't prevent every attack. One raid was particularly brutal, resulting in the slow and barbaric slaughter of villagers in 3 Westfall towns. This horrific incident became the breaking point for Lane, Anduin Lothar, and their lifelong friend Medivh. Defying the king's orders, the three decided to take matters into their own hands and launched a dangerous mission south to bring war to the Gurubashi. Initially shielded by Medivh's powerful magic, the trio ventured deep into Stranglethorn Vale. But their defiance soon led them to a perilous battle with Juk Nun, a fearsome Gurubashi warlord empowered by the bloodthirsty god Hakar the Soulflayer. The fight was brutal, pushing the three friends to the edge of their abilities. In the end, they emerged victorious, though they returned to Stormwind deeply shaken, not just by the battle, but by the frightening extent of Medivh's powers, which hinted at something far darker stirring within him. Though none of the Gurubashi trolls who witnessed Juk Nun's death survived, it didn't take long for the tribe to figure out who was responsible. Ferocious and vowing revenge, they rallied under Juk Nun's son, Xanun, and launched a devastating invasion, intent on razing Stormwind to the ground. Faced with the overwhelming force of the Gurubashi, King Barathin Rin ordered all of Stormwind's forces to retreat to the stronghold's gates, preparing for what he believed to be one final, decisive battle for the kingdom's survival. As the battle raged, casualties piled on both sides. Barathin, determined to end the conflict, led a bold counterattack aimed directly at Xanun. In a fierce clash, the aging king came heartbreakingly close to slaying the troll leader, but fate had other plans. Barathin fell on the battlefield before he could deliver the final blow. Overcome with guilt and desperation, Prince Lane turned to Medivh, begging him to unleash the terrifying power he had once used to defeat Juk Nun. Though deeply afraid of what that power would do, Medivh reluctantly agreed. With a display of raw, untamed magic, Medivh annihilated the Gurubashi forces, including Xanun, avenging Barathin's death and securing victory for Stormwind. The kingdom was saved, but the price of Medivh's unleashed power left a lingering unease among those who witnessed it. In the aftermath of the battle, Anduin Lothar was elevated to one of the highest ranks in Stormwind's military, a recognition of his bravery and leadership in the war. Meanwhile, in the years that followed, Lothar quietly sent many apprentice spellcasters to Medivh, hoping to strengthen Stormwind's arcane forces. But Medivh, haunted by his own abilities, refused every one of them, retreating further into isolation. When reports of strange creatures lurking in the Black Morass began to surface, Stormwind was abuzz with speculation. Whispers spread through the streets suggesting the creatures might be vengeful spirits, trolls wielding new powers, or even an unknown race from across the Great Sea. Eager to uncover the truth, King Lane dispatched Anduin Lothar to investigate. Leading a small force of the Knights of Stormwind, Lothar ventured into the Black Morass, unknowingly stepping into history's first bloody clashes between humans and orcs. Lothar and his men won several hard-fought skirmishes, yet for every orc they struck down, more seemed to pour in from the swamps. The orcs were relentless, their numbers swelling with each encounter. Overwhelmed and outnumbered, Lothar was forced to pull his forces back before they could penetrate far enough into the morass to discover the source of these invaders, the Dark Portal. He returned to King Lane with grim news. These creatures were not a mere wandering band. They were being reinforced from somewhere, and Stormwind would soon face a full-scale invasion. Thus began preparations for what would come to be known as the First War. As the kingdom readied for battle, Lothar's first task was to recruit and bolster Stormwind's army. In the midst of these efforts, he and his soldiers encountered Medivh and his young apprentice Khadgar on a scouting mission near the Black Morass. Lothar urged his old friend Medivh to join Stormwind's defense. Aware of the Guardians' inner conflict, Medivh, however, feigned reluctance, pretending to fear the full extent of his magical abilities. In reality, he was stalling, allowing the Horde time to gather strength for the impending invasion. Lothar also confided in Khadgar, sharing his concerns about Medivh's troubled past and urging the young apprentice to watch over the Guardian as more than just a student, but as a protector. Little did Lothar know, the darkness stirring within Medivh was far greater than anyone had realized, and would soon plunge them all into a war that would reshape Azeroth forever. Warchief Blackhand, the ruthless Orcish leader, unleashed raiding parties deep into Stormwind's territories, intending to spread fear and chaos among the human population. Villages across Brightwood, Westfall, and the southern Red Ridge Mountains were devastated, homes burned, inhabitants slaughtered or forced to flee. By the time Stormwind's patrols arrived to defend these settlements, the Horde had already vanished, leaving only smoldering ruins in their wake. The Orcs moved with a precision and brutality that the humans had never before encountered. In response to the growing threat, King Lane named Anduin Lothar as the King's Champion, the highest military title in the kingdom, entrusting him with the task of eliminating the Orcish menace. Lothar, a seasoned strategist, quickly devised a plan to turn the Horde's mobility against them. He carefully studied the pattern of their attacks and set up ambushes along the Orcs' retreat routes. Using this strategy, Lothar sent a loyal knight, Gavinrad the Dire, to command large numbers of troops, strategically positioning them to outmaneuver the raiders. The plan worked brilliantly. In several cases, small units of human knights were able to intercept and destroy entire Orc raiding parties without suffering a single casualty. The Horde, once believing they could crush the humans with ease, soon realized that they were facing an adversary unlike any they had fought before. Both sides now recognized that they were locked in a deadly game of wits and strength, a battle that would decide the future of Stormwind and its people. 3 years after the Dark Portal had opened, the Orcish raids had wreaked havoc on Stormwind's countryside, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. Farms, villages, forges, and trade houses lay in ruins, crippling the kingdom's economy. Even more devastating was the loss of critical food supplies, many of which had been destroyed or fallen into Horde control, threatening Stormwind City with famine within a few months. Sensing weakness, Warchief Blackhand seized the opportunity and set his sights on the Red Ridge Mountains, planning to use them as a staging ground for an assault on Stormwind City itself. The Horde marched through the foothills of Red Ridge with little resistance, confident that the humans wouldn't dare attack until they reached Stormwind's gates. It was exactly the illusion Lothar wanted to create. As Blackhand led a raiding party into the mountains to seize Lakeshire, Lothar sprang his trap. In a daring maneuver, he and his knights charged down the slopes, launching a sudden and devastating ambush that caught the Orcs completely off guard. The Horde raiders, though ferocious, were quickly overwhelmed, and almost all were slain in the onslaught. Lothar himself came within an inch of killing Blackhand, but 2 warlocks from the Shadow Council accompanying the war chief unleashed a torrent of fellfire, forcing Lothar and his forces to retreat. Though Blackhand had narrowly escaped death, he was humiliated by the ambush. Ferocious at the warlocks for failing to foresee the trap, he executed both on the spot, blaming them for his near downfall. Despite this temporary victory for Lothar, the Horde regrouped, and weeks later they returned in force, capturing Lakeshire and the surrounding land. The war was far from over, and both sides knew that the final showdown was looming ever closer. After the fall of Brightwood, Westfall, and the Red Ridge Mountains, the Horde set its sights on Stormwind City. Thousands of Orc soldiers marched through Elwyn Forest, surrounding the city and cutting off all access except by sea. Warchief Blackhand tasked Kilrog Deadeye and Cho'Gall with leading their Bleeding Hollow and Twilight Hammer clans in a brutal siege on the capital. Throughout the night, siege engines relentlessly bombarded Stormwind's walls, weakening its defenses. As dawn broke, Kilrogg and Shogal launched their assault. Orc warriors stormed the battlements while warlocks rained fellfire upon the defenders, causing devastating losses. The situation grew dire. Stormwind teetered on the brink of collapse. Just as the city seemed doomed to fall, cries of alarm erupted from the rear lines of the Horde. Lothar, along with a majority of Stormwind's knights, had circled around the Horde by sea and now charged through Elwynn Forest, catching the Orc rearguard completely by surprise. The knights cut through the Horde's ranks with brutal efficiency. As the Bleeding Hollow and Twilight's Hammer clan struggled to regroup and fend off the knights, the gates of Stormwind suddenly burst open. The city's soldiers, emboldened by the turn of events, poured out in a counterattack, flanking the Orcs from the opposite side. Outmaneuvered and suffering heavy casualties, the Horde was forced into a chaotic retreat, fleeing back to the Red Ridge Mountains to rethink their strategy. This battle marked the greatest disaster the Horde had ever faced. The timely counterattack had been orchestrated with the help of information Lothar and King Lane received from Khadgar, who in turn had learned of the Horde plans from Garona. The intelligence proved critical in preparing Stormwind's defenses and turning the tide of the battle, securing a much-needed victory for the kingdom. During the war, a rogue band of ogres, led by the fearsome ogre lord Turok, stole the Tome of Divinity, a sacred book cherished by the clerics of Northshire. Determined to recover the tome, Anduin Lothar led an expedition deep into the ogre's lair, the notorious Dead Mines in Westfall. However, the mission quickly turned into a disaster. Lothar and his men were overwhelmed and taken captive, left to face slow and torturous deaths. For nearly 20 agonizing months, Lothar and a handful of survivors languished in the ogre's caves, awaiting what seemed an inevitable fate. Salvation came when Azerothian troops, led by the Defender of the Crown and sent by both the Abbot of Northshire Abbey and King Lane, stormed the Dead Mines and freed Lothar and his men. With the Tome of Divinity reclaimed, Lothar returned to Stormwind, delivering the prized book back to Northshire Abbey. Though weakened by his captivity, he rejoined the war effort, once again leading Stormwind's forces against the Orcish Horde. In the third year of the war, during a private conversation, Lothar expressed his concerns about Medivh to Khadgar, recalling the mage's mysterious coma and unusual behavior. Troubled by these memories, Lothar arranged for a message to be sent to Karazhan, asking Medivh to return to Stormwind to help address the deaths of Hugarin and Huglar. Lothar's worst fears were confirmed when Khadgar later arrived with a grim revelation. Medivh had betrayed humanity by opening the Dark Portal and summoning the Orcs into Azeroth. Shocked by the news, Lothar shared this with King Lane, who refused to believe that Medivh would willingly betray Azeroth. The king argued that Medivh's questionable actions were likely part of a larger, brilliant plan to defeat the Horde. Confident in the mage's loyalty, Lane believed that Medivh, alongside the armies of Stormwind, would be enough to turn the tide of the war. Faced with a heartbreaking choice between his loyalty to the king and his instincts, Lothar trusted his gut. He gathered a force and, leaving the city's defenses in the hands of Gavinrad, led a daring assault on Karazhan to confront Medivh. Alongside Khadgar and the half-orc Garona, Lothar ventured into the depths of the tower to face the Mad Guardian. In a climactic battle, Khadgar delivered a fatal blow to Medivh by stabbing him in the heart, while Lothar dealt the final stroke, beheading the fallen Guardian with a single strike of his great sword. Thus, Medivh became the first Guardian in centuries to die in combat, his betrayal marking a turning point in the war, and solidifying Lothar's legacy as one of Azeroth's greatest heroes. The death of Medivh, though a significant blow to the dark forces threatening Azeroth, could not halt the relentless advance of the Orcish Horde. Returning from Karazhan with heavy hearts, Lothar and his warriors hoped to salvage what was left of their homeland, but what awaited them was a kingdom in ruins. Stormwind, once glorious, had been reduced to smoldering ashes. The Horde had ravaged the countryside, claiming the surrounding lands as their own, leaving devastation in their wake. To make matters worse, King Lane, their courageous leader, had been murdered, and the people of Stormwind, once proud and free, were forced into hiding, scattered and broken. In the face of this overwhelming tragedy, Lothar and his companions swore a solemn and grim oath to reclaim their homeland at any cost, Yet, even as they made this vow, Lothar understood the truth. Stormwind was lost. The war as they had known it was over. With the kingdom in ruins and the enemy too strong to repel, Lothar made a decision to focus on saving what remained of his people. He declared the war lost and turned his efforts towards survival. Gathering the remnants of Stormwind's shattered army and as many civilians as he could, Lothar led a desperate retreat across the Great Sea, steering them toward the distant shores of Lordaeron. There, he hoped to find refuge and allies, and perhaps the means one day to strike back against the Horde and reclaim the homeland they had lost. With King Lane dead and young Prince Varian still a child, the mantle of leadership fell to Anduin Lothar. As Knight Champion of Stormwind, Lothar took on the role of Varian's protector, vowing to protect the prince and ensure that one day Stormwind could be reclaimed. Together with Varian and Archmage Khadgar, Lothar journeyed to the court of King Tyrannus Menethil II of Lordaeron. Upon arriving in Lordaeron, Lothar recounted the tragic fall of Stormwind to any who would listen, his words carrying the weight of a kingdom's destruction. His passionate and eloquent pleas for unity stirred the hearts of many, leading to an emergency council of the human kingdoms. Thanks to the political skill of his longtime friend King Tyrannus, this council gave birth to the Alliance of Lordaeron. Lothar's tale traveled far, even reaching the ears of the High Elves, who had long remained aloof from human affairs. Remembering the ancient debt they owed the Arathi bloodline for saving Quel'Thalas during the Troll Wars, the elves sent a contingent of their forces to join the cause. The Wildhammer dwarves of Airy Peak, recently attacked by the Horde, also pledged their support to Lothar. As the Horde's conquest spread, the Bronzebeard dwarves and gnomes of Khazmodan were driven from their homes, prompting them to rally behind the Alliance as well. With these powerful allies now united under the banner of the Alliance, Lothar had forged a force capable of challenging the might of the Orcish Horde, a coalition of humans, elves, dwarves, and gnomes determined to reclaim their homelands and drive the Horde from Azeroth. Due to his unmatched skill in warfare, his extensive expertise battling the orcs, and status as a neutral figure, free from the political rivalries of the Northern Kingdoms, Anduin Lothar, descendant of Thoradin, was appointed Supreme Commander of the Alliance forces. The Northern Kings, wary of placing their armies under the command of a rival nation, found in Lothar the perfect leader to unite them in the war against the Horde. During his time in Lordaeron, Lothar was approached by Alonzus Fowl, who was deeply saddened by the news of Northshire Abbey's fall. In response, Fowl introduced Lothar to a new order of holy warriors, the Paladins, and urged him to make them his commanders. Lothar readily accepted and soon appointed the promising young Turalyon, who reminded him of King Lane, as his second in command. Alongside Turalyon, he named his old friend Admiral Dalen Proudmoore, as well as Uther the Lightbringer and Khadgar as his lieutenants. By the time the orcs reached the shores of Lordaeron, Lothar was 56 years old. Throughout the Second War, he led the Alliance forces from battle to battle with valor and strategic brilliance, earning the title Lion of Azeroth for the sight of his flashing shield as he cut through orc ranks. After the Horde's mysterious retreat from Lordaeron and Admiral Proudmoore's decisive naval victories, Lothar pressed the offensive, leading the Alliance armies to liberate much of Khazmodan, where he joined forces with Muradin and Bran Bronzebeard. His campaign continued into Azeroth, where he eventually breached the Black Morass itself. Sensing that the Horde was fracturing from within, Lothar saw his opportunity to strike a final blow. Gathering the remnants of his forces, he pushed Warchief Doomhammer south, driving the orcs back into the ruined heartland of Stormwind. There, the Alliance trapped the Horde within the volcanic fortress of Blackrock Spire. However, tragedy struck when Lothar and his troops were ambushed at the base of Blackrock Spire. The final confrontation between the two armies erupted in a devastating clash, a battle that would decide the fate of Azeroth. Amidst the chaos and bloodshed, Anduin Lothar, the Lion of Azeroth, became separated from his troops, surrounded by the fury of war. In the heart of the battlefield, he came face to face with Orgrim Doomhammer. The two legends engaged in a fierce and grueling duel, each strike resonating with the weight of their histories and the fate of their people. Lothar, though valiant, was worn down by the relentless onslaught. As the duel reached its climax, Doomhammer delivered a crushing blow, shattering Lothar's sword and leaving him vulnerable. In that fateful moment, Doomhammer struck again, his mighty hammer delivering a final brutal strike that shattered Lothar's skull. The fall of the Alliance's greatest hero sent shockwaves through the battlefield, the sound of his death echoing like a thunderclap. It was a moment that could have broken the Alliance, a loss that seemed insurmountable. But instead of succumbing to despair, Lothar's death ignited a fierce, burning resolve within the hearts of his comrades. Under the leadership of Turalyon, they rallied with renewed fury, turning the tide of the battle and delivering a crushing defeat to the Horde. Lothar's sacrifice became the spark that fueled their final victory, ensuring that his legacy would live on through the triumph of the Alliance. At the age of 57, Anduin Lothar never lived to see his beloved Stormwind rebuilt or freed from Orcish control. However, his legacy endures in stone, a towering monument depicting Lothar in his final battle. Defiant Charge still stands in the burning steppes, forever pointing toward Blackrock's spire where he fell in battle. In a twist of fate, the materials used for the monument were hauled by orcs, forced into labor after their defeat in the Second War. Though Lothar is gone, his legacy continues to inspire the people of Stormwind. His name, immortalized in stone and memory, is carried by the kingdom's current king, a testament to the enduring spirit of the Lion of Azeroth. The Alliance expedition to Draenor, led by the battle-hardened veterans who fought alongside Anduin Lothar during the Second War, chose to honor his memory by calling themselves the Sons of Lothar. As Khadgar explains, they did so in honor of the greatest, most selfless man we ever knew. In Honorhold, a monument of remembrance was built, serving as a tribute to everything Lothar stood for and fought to protect. During his lifetime, Lothar authored what is regarded as the definitive guide to warfare, a book titled A Treatise on Strategy. This masterwork, written in his own hand, details the optimal deployment of forces and battle tactics, providing timeless wisdom for securing victory on the battlefield. His legacy is honored every year during Remembrance Day, a solemn occasion where his courage and sacrifice are remembered, as well as all those who have fallen in the line of duty fighting to protect the Alliance. And that's going to do it for this one. Hopefully you did enjoy. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you in the next one.